We often assume extreme belief systems emerge from chaos or ignorance. History suggests something more structured. Across decades and continents, organized movements persuaded ordinary people to surrender autonomy, relationships, and personal judgment, not through force first, but through meaning. Purpose, belonging, certainty. These systems follow recognizable psychological patterns, studied by scientists and repeatedly exploited by charismatic leaders. Here are 10 extreme belief systems that shocked the world, and the mechanisms that made them powerful. Baksa, number 10. Why? High control groups work. Psychology explained. High control systems operate through predictable human responses. But Leon Festinger described cognitive dissonance. When people invest effort or sacrifice into a belief, doubt becomes uncomfortable, so belief intensifies to justify commitment. As Stanley Milgram demonstrated, how ordinary individuals comply with harmful orders when authority appears legitimate. Philip Zimbardo showed how environment and assigned roles rapidly reshape behavior and moral judgment. Psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton identified patterns of thought reform, control of information, a confession rituals, purity demands, and identity reconstruction. Together, these produce a progression: belonging, commitment, isolation, identity fusion. Control is not imposed all at once. It is layered. Number 9. Obedience above all in the family. International. Founded in 1968 by David Berg, the movement promoted communal living, absolute devotion, and separation from mainstream society. Members were encouraged to rely entirely on internal authority for truth and guidance. External media, criticism, and former relationships were framed as spiritual threats. Daily life, education, relationships, even personal decisions was shaped by doctrine. Obedience was reframed as proof of faith. Former members later described dependency structures where leaving meant social, emotional, and existential rupture. The system sustained itself by redefining loyalty as morality. Thakur, number 8. Faith and isolation in Children of God. Ahe. Emerging in the late 1960s under David Berg, the movement expanded internationally. Through youth outreach and countercultural appeal, recruitment emphasized unconditional love, spiritual certainty, and communal purpose. But internal organization increasingly centered on isolation from outsiders and strict adherence to leadership communication. Members were encouraged to restructure family bonds around group identity. Language, norms, and daily routines reinforced ideological unity. Sociologists later identified classic high control indicators: information filtering, authority centralization, and identity absorption. The movement illustrates how emotional belonging can evolve into structural dependency. Number 7. The control tactics of NXIVM. Founded by Keith Raniere, NXIVM presented itself as a rational self-improvement system, combining ethics training and personal development. Courses emphasized self-mastery, discipline, and loyalty to a structured hierarchy. Members advanced through ranks, investing increasing time, money, and identity into the organization. Investigations later revealed mechanisms of behavioral control, including secrecy structures, reputation leverage, and escalating commitment requirements. The movement demonstrated how modern organizational frameworks, coaching, mentorship, professional growth can function as vehicles for psychological dependency when authority becomes absolute. Number 6. The Secrets of the Order of the Solar Temple. Founded by Joseph DiMambro and Luc Jouret, the group combined mysticism, elitism, and apocalyptic transition narratives. Members were told they belonged to an initiated, spiritual elite preparing for transformation beyond ordinary reality. Ritual structure, symbolic hierarchy, and financial commitment reinforced internal cohesion. Belief was framed not as opinion, but as initiation. Across Switzerland, Canada, and France, the movement's trajectory culminated in coordinated tragedies that drew global scrutiny. It remains a case study in ideological insulation, reinforced by secrecy and exclusivity. Number 5. Life inside Branch Davidians. Led by our David Koresh, the community centered on prophetic interpretation and centralized spiritual authority. Members lived collectively near Waco, Texas, structuring daily routines around doctrine, preparation, and obedience. External institutions were viewed with distrust, reinforcing internal cohesion and dependency. A 1993 federal standoff brought global attention to the group's internal structure. isolation dynamics, and the consequences of escalating confrontation between closed systems and external authority. Number 4. Charisma and collapse, the movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. Founded by Joseph Kibweter and Yikridonia Mwerinde, the movement promoted strict moral codes and apocalyptic prophecy. Followers sold possessions, severed external ties, and prepared for a predicted spiritual event. Internal communication emphasized purity, obedience, and collective destiny. Dissent was reframed as moral failure. The collapse of the movement revealed how absolute certainty, when reinforced by isolation and authority, can override self-preservation instincts. Number 3. The rise and fall of Heaven's Gate. Founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, the group merged spiritual salvation with extraterrestrial cosmology. Members renounced prior identities, adopted uniform lifestyles, and adhered to a structured worldview centered on transcendence. Language, dress, and routine reinforced collective identity and separation from mainstream society. No, the movement became one of the most recognizable modern examples of total ideological commitment organized around cosmic narrative and charismatic authority. Number 2. Power, Control, and Aum Shinrikyo. Founded by Shoko Asahara, the movement blended apocalyptic prophecy, meditation practices, and scientific rhetoric. It attracted educated followers and built a sophisticated hierarchical structure. Authority was centralized, dissent discouraged, and doctrine framed as absolute truth guiding world transformation. The movement's actions demonstrated how ideology, organization, and charisma can converge into a system capable of large-scale real-world impact. Number 1. Inside People's Temple. When loyalty became total, founded by Jim Jones, and the movement began with messages of social equality, justice, and communal support. Followers relocated to a remote settlement where daily life, information flow, and social structure were tightly controlled. Isolation intensified identity fusion between leader and group. Surveillance, loyalty tests, and ideological reinforcement normalized absolute obedience. The final outcome became one of the most studied cases of total ideological control in modern history, illustrating how commitment, isolation, and authority can converge into irreversible consequence. These movements did not begin with harm. They began with answers. Answers to uncertainty, answers to loneliness, answers to fear. They were sustained not only by leaders, but by systems that reshaped identity gradually and predictably. The lesson is not that belief is dangerous. It is that unchecked authority combined with psychological leverage can redefine reality. History shows a consistent pattern. When belonging replaces questioning, when authority replaces evidence, when identity replaces autonomy, control no longer feels like control. And the most powerful systems are the ones people believe they chose freely.